Welcome back, and today the first in our series of monthly segments called Mental Health Moments with Rogers Memorial Hospital. Today's focus is on making New Year's resolutions that last. One very brave woman is here to share her personal battle with an eating disorder, how she got her problem under control, and what steps you should take if you would also like to change your life. Please welcome Sue McKenzie. She is the co-director of Rogers INHEALTH. We also have Dr. Tracey Cornella-Carlson. She's the medical director of the Child and Adolescent Eating Disorder Services there, and Denise Folcik is here to share her story about living in recovery with an eating disorder and OCD. A long introduction, but thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate it, and for you to be so brave to share your story. At what age did you realize that you had an eating disorder?
Well, you know, my eating disorder started a little later. A lot of time people look at eating disorders as something that is more of an adolescent problem. Mine actually started after I'd had my 4 children and decided I wanted to get back to my pre-baby weight, and started using unhealthy eating behaviors to lose weight, and eventually it turned into what I use to cope with my life. An eating disorder can become very much like someone's alcohol, and I was using food to cope. So mine actually started when I was 28. My first round of treatment started when I was 43.
Wow. So it was many years before you sought help. And, you know, one of the things we're going to talk about is making lasting changes. And the first step is kind of being unaware that it's even a problem. But then that second step is just beginning to see that it's a problem. So you were 28 about the time it started. At what point did you actually begin to see that it was a problem?
You know, it was when I was around 43. My youngest daughter was 16, and she was starting to spread her wings, and empty nest was starting to be kind of a reality in my life. And I had been I was bulimic for many years, but when this happened with her, I went into a depression, which took my appetite away, which kind of threw me into the end of like anorexia, and started really losing weight. And I was actually driving with my daughter, and I lost consciousness behind the wheel and was taken to the emergency room, where they realized that a lot of my levels had bottomed out because of malnutrition. And so that was the very first time when I thought there could be a problem.
And good for you for recognizing that it's a problem. And Sue, that's the key. I mean, we talk about these different steps. So then being aware that it's a problem, and then learning about and making a plan for change. It doesn't mean the change necessarily happens right away, but it's kind of starting to think that way, right?
Absolutely. And one of the interesting things is we have to, and you can hear it in Denise's words, we have to spend some time honoring our good reasons for our bad habits, which sounds a little weird, but what happens if we don't do that, we can make a change, but the minute that we have a problem with that change, we're going to go back to that. If we don't really understand why we were there in the first place, and honor that maybe there were some good reasons that really ended up not being so good, then we gradually move into looking at the change we want to make and getting serious about how we're going to maintain that change over a lifetime, which is, you know, they say most of us are either on the fence about a change or we're working hard to maintain it. And so we need to figure out what to do in those stages.
I think it's profound what you said about having good reasons for making bad choices, because the motivation for it is something, and a lot of times I think it's a coping mechanism. So then you make the change, and then you have to do the other part of that, which you said is maintaining the change. A lot of people have a problem, whether it's with an eating disorder, or maybe it's some sort of addiction or something else. But you never think of it as being part of the process of change, that just realizing that you have a problem. But that's part of the process.
Yeah, and I think about, there's 2 things to remember that we can all do in our lives. I need to have people that I trust and respect, that every once in a while I check in with, because typically someone I know and love knows something's going on with me maybe before I do, and so regular check-ins allow us, it doesn't have to be something like a mental health disorder, it can just be something that's going on in your life that you need to adjust in order to have a better life. So checking in with people, and then if you're the person who sees it in someone that you love and trust, being a gentle mirror. Non-judgmental, but just, you know, you can have those conversations that says, you know, I notice some things are different lately, and I want more joy for you in your life. Can we talk about it?
And Doctor, with your role in the Eating Disorders Clinic, what do you see as being the secret to success? So people who are actually become aware of a problem and then make lasting change.
Well, I think, as we've talked about, early identification is really important, and sometimes family members have to point out to the person that they see that there's a problem. And I've actually asked some of my patients, you know, what have your families done to help you get into treatment? And they've said really the unconditional support and the willingness to talk openly about the problem. So that's key. And families can provide a lot of hope and unique perspective that, in fact, the person's life can be a lot different and a lot better.
And I think that's huge. And being blind to it and being unaware of it, to having it come into full view is probably a big part of keeping the positive changes. What for you do you think allowed you to get to the point where you were not just recovered, but that you've been able to maintain that?
You know, when I was in treatment, they would say, you know, when you get to the other side, it's going to be so amazing. And to me, my life for so many years was what I was, you know, living with my eating disorder and OCD. And so that was life. I couldn't imagine that it could be any different. But once I was in treatment and, you know, my mind was getting healthy and I was getting healthy, and I started to, you know, really learn who I was and love who I was, and I started seeing the changes, it was so amazing. It's, you know, I found out who I was, which was kind of scary. You know, it's always like, you're going to find out who you are. And it's like, well, what if I don't like who I am, you know? I really love who I am. And so, you know, really embracing who I am and finding my values and everything has just made such a difference. And I feel wonderful. My mind is so clear. And you know, and I work on this, you know, every day. And, you know, when you talk about recovery, I like to refer to it as discovery. I think that sounds really positive, and for me, I'm learning something every day about myself and how to cope with life. I mean, there's always going to be things that come up in life that it's like, you know, could they knock me back down? But it's like I use really healthy ways of coping, which keeps me going. You know, I have to, you know,
remind yourself and kind of conquer it sometimes on a daily basis.
Yes, but it becomes second nature then, you know. And
but I love what you said when earlier during the commercial break about your birth certificate. You feel like it should say Rogers on it.
Absolutely.
Because that's when your life really, you feel, started. And I think that's one thing that people are maybe not aware of is the type of help you can get at Rogers, the OCD clinic, the eating disorders clinic. These are places that aren't just everywhere in our country. We're very lucky to have this high level of help so close to us. So I want to share information for people out there, starting with the stories that you can hear more about. You can see Denise's story and more stories of recovery if you visit rogersinhealth.org. That's the website there on your screen. And to find out more about all the great services at Rogers Memorial Hospital, you can visit them at this address. It's rogershospital.org. Thank you so much for being brave enough to share your story, and thank you ladies also for being here. We appreciate it.